Residents and visitors of Richmond, BC enjoy the city's waterfront views and coastal lifestyle, but they may soon find that the city's land and waters are at risk. Scientists, city council, and community members believe a proposed pipeline and tanker project shipping jet fuel to the Vancouver International Airport poses major risks to Richmond's environmental health.
About 900-foot-long Panamax supertankers coming up the Fraser River to number 7 Road with a pipeline going from there to the airport. The idea is to get cheap jet fuel from the east coast of the USA, which actually comes from the Persian Gulf, and undercut the jet fuel they're buying from Kinder Morgan at the present time.
Yeah, the pipeline proposal originally a lot of people lost sight of the fact that the Airport Fuel Consortium wants to bring Panamax tankers up the Fraser River and then build six-story tanks right by a giant recreational and movie complex called Silver City in Richmond.
Vancouver Airport Fuel Facilities, also known as VAFFC, plans to modify an existing terminal on the Fraser River's south arm, while also developing a tank farm facility and 15-kilometer pipeline to YVR.
The potential threat is really the concern. Who also accepts the increased liability? We're talking volume now, a secondary pipeline, a larger potential.
The provincial government says that the Environmental Assessment Office has reviewed the project and found it will not result in any adverse effects. Approval conditions include tankers to be double-hulled and pre-screened, that 2 tugs escort each ship, and marine pilots are trained for the river's environment. However, residents are still opposed.
Any tanker in the Fraser River is just a phenomenal threat to the fish and wildlife resources in a globally significant river. So we're quite shocked that anyone would propose that in 2011. But when we look at the trends we see in our society right now of what Stephen Harper's doing in terms of government environmental standards, Christy Clark, everything is jobs, growth, economic considerations. The environment's going to get a real hard kicking in its behind over the next several years.
Do you trust the people in charge to choose the least of the evils on what's, obviously an evil solution? And I don't trust the current government to know when that point is too far and when the risk is too high.
That demand is part of that hub, which is part of that big pile of money sitting on the table, right? You know what I mean? And we're all clamoring up it,
The Vancouver Airport Fuel Facilities Corporation say that the project's spill prevention and response strategies go beyond industry standards and best practices. Richmond City Council members beg to differ.
But the big damage is the potential spills. It is inevitable, and all the statistics, even from the companies promoting the tankers coming up the river, it is inevitable that there will be spills in offloading at number 7 Road.
Jet fuel is quite toxic. It'll evaporate in a few days, but if the river's cold, it is most of the time that evaporation rate is greatly reduced. Plus, you don't need much jet fuel or kerosene. It's pretty well the same thing on the feathers of birds, and this is a cornerstone of the Pacific Flightway from Alaska down right into South America.
Richmond residents are concerned with environmental implications of the project and want to know that there are mitigating factors of spill prevention.
If something were to happen in the city of Richmond, how can we fix it, right? Like, what is the emergency response plan that we have in place? If there isn't, then that's quite concerning. And what's the environmental impact, and what's the impact on people that will be affected? So it is definitely a concern that they're planning on going through with it.
I would want to be reassured that they have the equipment, that they have the trained staff to deal with this sort of thing before any pipeline would go in place or any tanker facilities would go in place. I appreciate the fact that, planes have to fly, people have to get to where they're going, fuel has to be delivered somehow. I would just want it to be delivered in a safe fashion with precautions.
So the issue is an emergency response plan. The response is probably, there isn't a pipeline in existence yet, so it's difficult to get a detailed plan. You can hide behind this.
Vancouver Airport Fuel Facilities Corporation says, it's not volatile, and they basically dismissed explosion and spill concerns, and that's quite a concern in terms of public safety alone. Because if you have a spill, it's on the south bank of Richmond, the fuel would generally go downstream, but it could even go upstream with a high tide into marinas. But downstream of that area, we have the whole Steveston waterfront, a fishing harbour. So if fuel got into that area, it'd be quite a mess, really, for the fishermen.
After several attempts of trying to contact Vancouver Airport Fuel Facilities Corporation Director, Adrian Pollard, I was unable to receive any type of comment or response. I also attempted to contact any member of the Emergency Services Fire Rescue in Richmond and was told that no member of their force was able to give an interview or any comment due to reasons undisclosed.
Where they plan to put their terminal and 6 giant storage tanks of 80 million litres right near the banks of the Fraser River. It's one of the biggest trafficking bottlenecks in all of British Columbia, the Diaz Tunnel or the George Massey Tunnel area. And I've been stuck in that traffic sometimes up to 3 hours. So if there's an emergency, how do fire engines and ambulances and everything get through?
So, of course, what we're now hearing is they're going to take the tunnel out and build a bridge so they can get the tankers up the river. So that leads us to the next problem we have with this issue, is that the jet fuel tankers are the trigger for removing the tunnel so the entire Fraser River estuary and all the farmland in Richmond and Delta can be industrialized.
I mean, there's going to be growth limits eventually, and why don't we stop before we get to those limits? Global warming, overpopulation.
You want coal? Is that what you're looking for? Is that what you're looking for? But I'm just not thinking about me, what I have. I'm thinking about the future. What are other people going to have? Who's going to live here?
Nowadays, I think you can almost ram through any project, and I think the project is almost approved before the assessment begins, and then you try and do the studies to dismiss any public concerns, and in this case, they haven't done a very good job of that at all.
The existing transport system currently relies on 2 fuel sources, the Chevron refinery in Burnaby and the BP Cherry Point refinery in Washington. However, the Vancouver Airport Fuel Facilities say that the current method is unsustainable in growing economies of both British Columbia and Washington State.
Existing pipeline, while it is running at capacity part of the year, it's not running at capacity all of the year, while it's running at capacity at part of the year, simply by putting pumping stations along the line and speeding up the flow of that pipeline, they could meet the needs of the airport.
And they argue, oh, the pipeline's getting too small, but Kinder Morgan says that's not true. They could still supply everything the airport needs. And the city of Richmond is unanimously opposed to it. The city of Delta is unanimously opposed.
We do not think that the shipping of jet fuel from the Persian Gulf through the Panama Canal is necessary when we have jet fuel that can come from the Burnaby plant that's already there, and that we simply don't need jet fuel in the Fraser River. Simple as that. It's a threat to the Fraser River estuary.
According to Emergency Management of BC's weekly incident report study, BC has already experienced 189 spills of oil and dangerous goods in 2014.
Always talk about British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia, best place on earth. Well, it won't be if we carry on the way we are. It's trying to suck out every bit of natural gas and oil and sell it as quickly as possible.
Now, unfortunately, the City Council has absolutely no say on whether a jet fuel pipeline goes across Richmond. The decision, believe it or not, is being made by the Port Metro Vancouver Port Authority. The port owns the land and controls the river.
Langer feels that a compromise involving an all-pipeline solution would be the safest and most logical alternative.
So if we maintain the existing pipeline to Burnaby, build a 70-kilometer pipeline to the Arco refinery, we would get all of our crude oil to run those refineries from North America, and we wouldn't have to put a drop of it onto any boat or any truck anywhere. That would be a win-win solution.
People value the BC coastline in this area, and this project is likely to raise more controversy rather than less. For Langara News, I'm Jacqueline Langan.